Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast, episode 816. I'm your host, Ril Dil Quinn, hosting another, looking at it as I looked at another fabulous episode of the best show on television, Snowfall, season 5, episode 4, Revolutions. This was a very layered episode, a lot going on in this episode. It kind of like was a slow burn leading to what transpired in the final scene. Give you a quick recap. You have the cops, cracking down on Franklin's operations in the projects. They raid the projects. They rough up a couple Franklin's men, Leon's guys, street guys. Oh, they leave Leon and Jerome alone, but this is, of course, was part of the result that Louis and her and her guy inside the police force are now on the same page. So he kind of wanted to send a message. In terms of that, you of course had the return of one Sissy Saint from Cuba. We have a lot to do on Sissy, so I'm not going to get too much into that. But she returns and sees what Franklin's up to, meets his fiance, and again, we'll get to a lot. We'll discuss a lot about the return of Sissy Saint. She was the catalyst of this episode without question. And of course, you had Franklin. And of course, you had the kind of not an introduction of hip hop to this show, but really the first episode that they had where they really talked about hip hop. So you had that going on. In terms of, having somebody who basically was talking about what was happening on the streets. And I didn't have that in the best scenes, but you had one of Franklin's, you had one of the guys who was basically rapping about Franklin and the whole, and what transpired last season with Franklin killing Man Boy, and Franklin killing Man Boy, of course, Jerome, and of course you had Jerome and Leon taking his tapes. So kind of a little bit introduction, so to speak, about hip hop into this show. And of course, Leon, you have Leon, some very interesting scenes with Leon. So we'll begin with the themes, family and secrets. There are a lot of characters there are a few number of characters with some secrets that Franklin doesn't know about. That he's going to seemingly, as this season plays along, is going to be caught off guard by some of the things that he doesn't know about the people that are closest to him, including his mother, including Leon, maybe even including his own fiance, his soon-to-be his own fiance, who is allegedly pregnant. Now, we'll get to that later on when I mean allegedly. So I thought, again, this was a family-oriented episode. And of course, it was led by one Sissy Saint. So Michael Hyatt, just the wonderful actress who plays Sissy Saint, returns. I know there have been some thoughts early in the season, maybe episode 1, if people were wondering whether she's still alive. Of course, I saw most of Snowfall fans saw the trailer and saw her in the trailer. We knew Sissy wasn't going to be dead, and she was going to eventually return. They bring her back in episode 4, this episode, and she was kind of gliding through this episode, and happy to be back. But then as the episode goes along, it kind of we kind of see little things that give us some insight that it wasn't just a happy reunion for her, that there was a specific reason why she returned. And we find out about that, of course, and somewhat find out about that in a couple of these scenes that we'll talk about. This is Franklin's mother, period. And what I mean by that, of course, we know that this is Franklin Saint's mother, but all his characteristics, to me, a lot of his characteristics that have made him Franklin Saint came out in her in this particular episode. How cunning she is, how just the charisma, just being able to pick up on things that being able to see the whole the long game, and being able to be being a somewhat of a chess master in her own right. You saw a lot of that come out in this episode, and being smooth about it. You know, we again a number of scenes that this was a Sissy Saint episode, and you think about her character throughout the course of these 5 seasons. She's a of course she has a Black Panther ties with Alton, but season 1 she's just a hard-working single mother trying to provide for her son. Like she's wanted no part initially of the drug game, no part of she's working in a restaurant, she's working for cleaning. I believe she was cleaning apartments, or just not cleaning apartments, but was doing working for a guy who owned apartments, a sleazy apartment owner. So she was just a typical, not I shouldn't say not typical, but she was like kind of a again sort of a typical single mother trying to make ends meet. And she's evolved into now where she's all the way in. Like there's no truth that she knows about it. She knows, of course, what Franklin does. And by the time this episode ends, she's almost accepting of it because of things that have transpired with her. So we've seen her kind of like develop and evolve from a innocent single mom to being fully fully into this game, to where not where she wants to sell drugs and is connected with Franklin from that standpoint, but where she accepts the fate of accepts who he is as a man, as a young man, as a young Black man, and what he's trying to do. And I don't we've seen previous seasons, 3 and 4 in particular, where she wanted him to get out and she was pushing for him to get out and so on. And hey, let's do this real estate. Let's thinking that he was going to use the real estate in order to get out of the drug game. But from what I've gathered watching this episode, I don't believe that she believes that he'll ever be out. And I think she's been resorted to that fact. Again, I don't want to talk. There's some scenes, of course, that we will discuss in more detail about her, but this was a Sissy Saint episode, to say the least. The actress Michael Hyatt was tremendous in this episode, and her character, again, from season 1 up until now, this is not the same character at all. It's just not. She's, again, the only similar. She loves her family. She loves Jerome. She loves Franklin. She loves Leon. She's still that caring mother, but she is that naiveness about the drug game and that kind of innocence that she had in the first 3 or 4 seasons, that's gone. That's completely disappeared. That's like that part of Sissy Saint is dead, figuratively dead. That's all there is to it. We'll talk more about her over the course of this podcast. Best scenes. So Leon is heated about the raids on the projects. He wants to go basically toe to toe with the cops. He goes to Ivy, wanting some guns, and not just want some high powered, basically want some high power shit. He wants some wartime guns. And as crazy as Ivy really shines in this scene as kind of like that mentor, the old head mentor who's telling Leon, like, hey, you sure you want to go this route? I've been a part of, I've seen some revolutions, I've seen some uprisings, and, telling him basically, if you go against the cops, it's only going to end up one way for you. It's only going to end up bad for you. So he almost tries to talk Leon out of it, but realizes that's not going to happen. So he stalls basically and says, hey, when Leon threatens to take business elsewhere, his money elsewhere, he tells Leon that he will indeed take care of him, and it's going to take a few days, maybe even a few weeks for him to get the kind of artillery that Leon wants. But Avi, we've seen Avi do some wild shit over the course of the first 4 seasons. This is the first time I've seen, really maybe not the first time, but one of the few times that you saw a human side from Avi, from the standpoint of that he really was trying to look out for Leon in a real way. Now, again, you have to remember he's had a relationship with Leon Franklin since season one. But at the end of the day, Avi, we know Avi is a businessman through and through. Period. He's a businessman, but he's also about, he's about his people, taking care of his people. But so he tries to stall Leon, but Leon really isn't having it. Leon wants to straight up go to war with the police after what transpired in the in the projects. Leon and Franklin. So Leon, again, this is coming off what transpired in the projects. Franklin comes to Leon and invites him to this big family dinner, celebrating the return of Sissy. And Leon just flat out says, no, I can't, be up here eating steak with you while our people are just getting ravaged by the cops. Like Leon is not only conflicted, but Leon has evolved. Like Leon is no longer. Again, we're seeing a lot of these characters turn another page, and we're finding another layer to a lot of these to some of these characters, and that's just really has jumped off to me. One of the things that has jumped off to me in the first few episodes, Leon is becoming something else, and you could feel the underlying tension that's with Leon and Franklin from the standpoint that Franklin is coming off as the capitalist who was just about the money and about the power. Leon, you remember the first episode, you remember last week's episode when Franklin, or it might have been, I think it was the second, maybe it wasn't last week, maybe it was the first or second episode. It wasn't episode 3. It was the first or second episode where Franklin's like, what are you going to do with your money? Put it into some real estate. Leon like, no, I'm good. Living in these projects, got a nice house in the projects. I'm not worried about that. So you see the philosophical separation between the two. And Leon is becoming, thinking about basically being a revolutionary. We don't know where this is going to take Leon's character, but there is going to be a separation to me, from Franklin from that standpoint. Definitely idealistically, there's a separation. So Leon turns down the invite and says, I need to be with my people. And basically tells Franklin that at this point, the family's not the most important thing right now. And that's where he's at. So Franklin has a look on his face at the end of that scene. Is like, he's wondering where Leon's head is from that standpoint. And of course, Leon refuses the dinner. So speaking of the dinner, so they have this big family dinner. You have Jerome had to talk Louie into coming. She wasn't initially going to come, but she ends up coming. So you have Sissy, you have Franklin, Ron and Neek, and Jerome. And the dinner is at this I can believe this fancy Japanese restaurant. And Jerome ordering, I think, Mai Tais and what have you. So it starts out friendly. They do, Franklin does his toast. Basically, it's about family, and it's all good. And then you start seeing this back and forth of sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle shots between Franklin and Louis. Louis brings up Alton. Louis asks Sissy, was the baby the reason why Sissy came back to the States? And Sissy picks up on this. Eventually, she picks up on this. Franklin tries to deflect. After one of the questions that Louis asked, Franklin brings up Jerome and Louis owning a horse. But this does not disparage Louis from asking these questions, and it gets to a point to where they talk, where they bring up Alton, and then that really opens up the floodgates, and Franklin eventually tells Sissy that Teddy Mack is back, and you can see the look on Sissy's face of anger / disappointment. Just a look of anger. It was extremely well played. well played by Michael Hyatt, who of course plays Sissy. And Louis basically tells Franklin, "Hey, she has a right to know." When Sissy confronts Franklin and Louis about what's going on between them, that's when the news comes out about Teddy being back. And of course, Franklin wanted no part of telling Sissy that. That was the last piece of information that he wanted his mother to know. Earlier in the episode, you had it was Sissy that brought up Alton when she was meeting with Franklin and Veronique at the real estate office, and you can see it turned dark real quick from Sissy's standpoint. They're talking real estate business, and then she kind of zones out, assuming that I'm definitely assuming that she was thinking about Alton at that point. So that was in an earlier scene. So this was kind of building up. So you get Franklin and Veronique. Franklin, of course, is annoyed by the dinner and what transpired. Veronique now has questions about Reed Thompson. She also finds a gun in Franklin's apartment. So she basically, calls Franklin out, says, "Hey, cut the bullshit. What, you haven't, been completely straight with me in terms of, about Reed Thompson and what have you, and what have you." And she questions his security, says they need to, beef up security, says they need more security. He agrees with that. And then, she takes the gun and actually puts the clip in the gun, and, as if she's done it before, which to me is not an accident. There's, again, the themes of this episode that I had were family and secrets. There's something more to her character. And I'm not going to immediately jump into she's a traitor and what have you, but there's some more story that we're going to find out about her. At the end of the scene, they were talking about her mother, and she basically described her mother as somebody that she does not want to be around, does not want to let back in her life. So I really think that I think we're going to see the mom probably before the season's out. I really do. And of course, we end the episode with the most pivotal and important scene in the episode. That's Sissy and Ruben. So Sissy goes to this restaurant, this diner, meets a guy who we don't know quite who he is or works for, but they begin talking about the government. She brings up, initially it's seeming like they don't know each other, but then they make a connection from a standpoint of, he says, "Hey, I know you've been through a lot, and your family's been through a lot," and she brings up, "Hey, I just want my family protected, and and then you can, Teddy McDonald is back," and basically tells him, "Then you can kill Teddy McDonald." So, of course, we're going to find out a lot more about this throughout the course of the season. We don't know who this guy is. Clearly, Sissy is involved somewhat with, I don't think trying to hurt Franklin, but I just think that she clearly wants Teddy Mac dead. That's what I mean. That's all you need to know. She wants him dead. She believes that he killed Alton. She even said it at the dinner when Louis asked what happened to Alton, and says he said, Teddy Mac killed him. Now, a couple of things you got out of that, a couple of things that were discussed in regards to Alton. It's seemingly that nobody was found. It seems like, and if you go back to that last scene in episode 10 of the season 4 series finale, you had Teddy with the gun and Alton reading the book, The Spook by the Door, and Sissy had went off to the market. She ran an errand. So it seems like, I'm guessing when she got back, there was nobody. So that like she didn't find him, with a bullet in his head or however Teddy killed him. We're assuming that Teddy, either shot him or had him, or had him taken away. Or disappeared, or shot him and disappeared the body. So, but there was no body. she hasn't, like, to me, they I think they've given off indications that there was no body. So there's still that mystery. I believe. I mean, we all believe that he's dead, and Sissy believes it now. I think Franklin is convinced that he's dead. This was a pivotal scene, and Sissy is all the way in. Like, she's whether it's with the Cuban government or somebody that is after that also wants Teddy Mac gone. Um, so I don't know exactly what her role is or how she's connected, but she's in. That's all there is to it. So those were the best scenes. As far as MVP, I mean, this was easy for me. It was definitely the Sissy Saint. She drove this episode. The actress Michael Hyatt was tremendous in this episode. She really was. It was a very understated, reserved performance that, I mean, you could see her growing. You saw her doing the smiling, laughing, and you saw all the joy. But then you could see those small moments of anger and pain and just ferocity without, again, she's not a yeller. She's not somebody that's going to be a rah-rah type, you know, go for broke. She's not going to pull a gun, stuff like that. But you saw her, as the episode went along, start to we start to realize why, or start to realize why she actually was back. And there was no question. Yeah, sure, she wanted to see Franklin, but she's there for it. She came back for a specific reason. And she came back for a specific reason. We're gonna, I think, find out, of course, over the next couple of episodes, what that specific reason is. Again, there was no question who the MVP of this episode was. Again, this was a very layered episode. You think about where you're at after where we're at right now. We're almost halfway through the season. I mean, there are 10 episodes in the season, and we've already gotten through 4 episodes. And right now, you look at Franklin and his situation. What, who is on Franklin's side exactly right now? Think about it. Leon and he are going in different directions. Louis and Jerome, Louis and Jerome are still at odds in terms of this deal. With in terms of this Teddy Mac situation. He thinks Sissy Saint is on his side, but he doesn't know that she's plotting to kill Teddy Mac. He doesn't know that. His fiance Ryan Neek, who knows? Who knows where her loyalties lie? Not gonna call her quite a traitor yet. So Franklin has some, there's some problems beneath the surface that Franklin is unaware of that are going to come to light throughout the course of this season. Again, this is a tremendous episode, a very layered episode, and certainly we'll be looking forward to episode 5, the Iliad Part 1. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast, Snowfall, Season 5, Episode 4, Revolutions. Have a great rest of your evening. So long.